Hello everybody, and today we'll be taking a look at the 11-year-old 8600 GT released back in 2007. This then $150 card had multiple variants under the Tesla architecture, with our passively cooled gigabyte card supporting 2 texture processors, 32 CUDA cores at a 600 MHz base clock and 256 MB of GDDR3, clocked 720 MHz on a 128 memory bus. The 8600 GT was released after the extremely successful 8800 GTX as a more budget-oriented option. Luckily for us, both of these cards support up to DirectX 10, allowing us to run a variety of games. Personally, I've never experienced a passive GPU cooler yet, and yes, it functioned, but let's just say I'm glad my 2080 has 3 fans. Today's test system supports an i7-920 with 6GB of DDR3. Now, into the testing. First up for our benchmark, we have CounterStrike Source ran on a 64-player server with all settings as high as possible. In this installment of the Counter-Strike franchise, we saw an FPS in around the mid-50s for most of gameplay, but smoke grenades just destroyed our frame rate, dropping it down to the lower 30s. I'd say the lower to medium settings would be best to run this game with. Next up we have Just Cause 2, which surprised me with a playable experience. This game was ran with a mixture of settings and saw average FPS in the mid to upper 30s. The minimum specs for this game said 8800, but this card is more than plenty to play it with. Half-Life 2 is next, with the best frame rate of any on this list, but also the most variance. Due to this constant fluctuation, the average FPS was roughly in the mid-90s, a smooth and enjoyable experience. I truly cannot stress enough how all over the place the FPS was. I've never experienced this in any other game to such a degree. Following Half-Life 2, we play an even older title, Quake II. If this card could run any game, it'd be this, which did splendidly. All settings were ran maxed out as high as possible, and to my knowledge, a frame rate cap is not in place, but the FPS seemed locked at 60 FPS, only rarely dropping below. For our next game, Terraria, all settings were ran maxed out as well, and we observe a similar FPS to Quake II with a consistent FPS of 60. I did not dive into more endgame settings or boss fights or areas, but I predict a playable experience for those as well, since GPU usage never exceeded 40%, therefore meaning that this card can handle more load. Finally, we have Borderlands 2 with our worst experience here today. All settings were as low as possible, and a meager FPS in the mid-20s and upper teens was observed. While not in combat as well, the FPS only slightly improved. One odd event I noticed was that when I paused the game and returned a few minutes later, the FPS was decreased to lower teens and the usage did not exceed 50%. There's a specific instance in which this decrease occurs, and I have no explanation why this would happen. If you have any idea why this would happen, please comment below. Overall, this card is best suited for older games, not having aged well by any means. A budget card then and a crappy card now, the 8600 GT received a score of 3 out of 10, as most games were playable, but any process even remotely demanding I simply cannot recommend this card for. For God's sake, most integrated graphics cannot perform this card. Another note about this card is the extreme temperature of 107 degrees Celsius achieved by this card while playing Borderlands 2. I scoured some forums and it seems most cards do not reach this temperature. According to one forum, the passively cooled gigabyte card was infamous for these temperatures, so in the odd instance of yours seeking for 8600 GT, please do not get the one I've shown you today. Regardless, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. Also, please subscribe because that helps a lot in video quality and production and also positively affects my day. Finally, leave any questions or suggestions in the comments below and have a great day. Bye.